Counting of votes is underway in Iran after voting closed post-midnight on Friday after a series of extensions. Well, initial counting trends as per the Interior Ministry say that Masoud Pezeshkian, the only reformist in the race, is ahead of his closest rival Saeed Jalili by just about 10,000 votes. Here's a lowdown on where things stand in Iran at the moment. Well, third in the race as per early figures is Mohammad Baqir Kalibaf with over 300,000 votes, followed by Mustafa Por Mohammadi with over 15,000 votes. This as the voter turnout was recorded at 40% or about 24 million people who came out to vote in Iran. Now, not much is expected to change for Iran post the results. All four contestants align with the ideologies of the Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, who has held power since 1989. The expectations over little change are also visible in the voter turnout. Public discontent, especially among Iran's youth, has kept voters away in recent elections. With war on one side and an escalating confrontation on the other, another major blow are the rising regional tensions. Israel has come down heavily on the Iran-backed Hamas militant group in its war in Gaza. Meanwhile, Iran-backed Lebanon's Hezbollah also in a cross-border scuffle with Tel Aviv for the past few days. While the new president is said to be elected, he has very little control over Iran's backing of these groups, its policy on nuclear program or relations with the West. These matters are directly dealt with by Khamenei. The only thing that then remains in the realms of the president are the day-to-day government functionalities and the tone of Iran's foreign and domestic policy. Well, here's also a look at the contestants. Three of the contestants are hardliners, also known as conservatives, and one is a low-profile, comparative moderate, a reformist. Mohammad Baqir Kalibaf is one of two hardline frontrunners. He is the current Speaker of Parliament and a former Revolutionary Guards commander. Civil rights activist as well known as Kalibaf for crushing demonstrations, first as National Police Chief and then as Tehran mayor for 12 years when he suppressed months of unrest that shook the establishment in 2009. Well, that was all about Mohammad Baqir Kalibaf. Moving on to the other frontrunner, Saeed Jalili. He is best known abroad as a former chief nuclear negotiator for 5 years, that is from 2007. Jalili lost his leg fighting in the Iran-Iraq war in the 1980s, and he declares himself a pious believer in Iran's system of Islamic government. The third hardliner is Mustafa Por Mohammadi, the only cleric left in the race. He is a former Interior Minister and Deputy Intelligence Minister. Human Rights Watch in 2005 documented Por Mohammadi's alleged role in the execution of hundreds of prisoners in Tehran in 1988. And these are all the allegations he has never publicly addressed. The last contender in the race and the only reformist, Masoud Pezeshkian, is the only relative moderate among the four backed by the pro-reform camp. Pezeshkian was vocal in criticizing the Islamic Republic for its lack of transparency over Mahsa Amini, a young Iranian Kurdish woman whose death sparked demonstrations in 2022. And well, for more on this, our correspondent Anas Malik, who is in Tehran covering the elections, is now joining us on the show. Welcome to the broadcast, Anas. Now, early trends show that reformist Pezeshkian ahead of conservative Jalili with a margin of 10,000 votes. Now, with a close neck-and-neck fight in Iran, and if the numbers don't change at this point of time, do you anticipate a runoff election on July 5th?
Well, the runoff is definitely on the cards. Good morning to you, from Tehran, Rehisha and all the viewers. It's roughly 8 a.m. here. The ministry that's behind me, the Ministry of Interior, what you see behind me is from where the results are being announced. All of the ballots are being counted in the respective polling stations, and after the count, the results are being sent to this very ministry, the Ministry of Interior, and where all of it is being compiled and then being announced. What is really interesting about this election is the fact that Saeed Jalili, a former diplomat, has now emerged as the face of the conservatives, contrary to Bakr Qalibaf. Bakr Qalibaf was being looked forward, or was being tipped to be the conservative face, but that has not been the case. Masoud Pezeshkian, again, not a surprise, because what the feel on the ground was very pro-Pezeshkian, has been, at least for the time being, in the front run for the race. And as things stand, it's one of the two. Either it's Masoud Pezeshkian who takes the majority, or we're going into a second round. More than 24 million votes out of 64 million registered have been casted, and we're expecting the tally to go up as more results are to be announced. Remember, 58,000 polling booths were set up, out of which 25,000 initially will be counted, and based on that, the assessment will be put out. The polling went on for a whooping 16 hours. It began at 8 a.m. Last morning, and it went up till midnight. At least thrice is when we saw that the voting time was changed, was increased rather. It was initially supposed to end at 6, then it was supposed to end at 9, then they said it would end at 10, and eventually they announced that the voting will continue till midnight, till 12 a.m. and at midnight the voting did have a closure. So the results are continuing to pop in, but it is not a surprise to see Masoud Pezeshkian leading. However, the surprising bit in this election is the fact that Saeed Jalili has emerged over Bakr Qalibaf and has been the preferred candidate of the right-wing conservatives instead of Bakr Qalibaf.
Right, Anas, that's what we were talking about yesterday as well, that the Conservatives have rallied around one contestant, and it looks like it's Saeed Jalili who's the hardliner against Masoud Pezeshkian, the only reformist. But also, let's also talk about how there is somewhat growing discontent in Iran. The new Iranian president will be elected at a time when there's a lot of uncertainty in West Asia. The ongoing Israel-Hamas war, tensions and cross-border fires between Israel and Hezbollah as well, and also sanctions by the West, which has crippled the economy. And the economy was also one of the major issues amongst the voters in Iran. In your opinion, what do you think the top priority for the next Iranian president should be?
Well, in order of priority, we spoke to yesterday the spokesperson or spokeswoman of Masoud Pezeshkian, and she was absolutely clear that the first two priorities of, if elected into power, of Masoud Pezeshkian would be, one, to look at the economic problem, and B, foreign policy. You rightly mentioned that there is a conflict that's there in West Asia that's at the helm of all the problems. Limited is the scope, or is the right word, that the government would have oversight, or government would have its say on the wider scope of foreign policy. But when it comes to day-to-day operations, the priority would be, at least on the part of Masoud Pezeshkian, to not go into the Western pressure, though open negotiations. Saeed Jalili, on his part, he has been the lead nuclear negotiator in the past. So it would be interesting as to what his line had been, because he's the one who had taken this position that Iran should not be dictated by Western powers on what it has to do and what it not has to do. What we understand is that Iran is talking to Western diplomats quietly in Geneva, in New York, in other parts of the world, and this is just quiet diplomacy happening. So it could lead to one step or the other. It could either lead to, one, more sanctions, or two, opening up of Iran, but that is totally subjective to the outcome of the elections. In a while from now, we would be very clear as to which way it is swinging. Right now, Pezeshkian is in the lead, yes, but would this lead continue till the end of the day? I mean, your guess could be as good as mine because we're all eagerly awaiting the results of these elections. Rehisha?
Right, Anas will of course be tracking the results of the Iranian presidential polls with you very closely. Thanks very much for joining us on the show with your insights from Tehran.